Okay, hello. It is Thursday, July 23rd. Paul, you're down in Sydney today. How are things in Sydney?
Cold and blustery.
Ooh,
But yeah, I think the temperature right now is 9 Celsius, I think. I'll tell you here. Uno momento. It is 7. I'm sorry, even colder, 7. So yeah,
brr.
I was wearing my puffer.
Well, up in the Seattle area, we're in like the heat of summer. It's been miserable, but it got cooler today. So hopefully, I don't know, you and I have another week before we head to Las Vegas. And
Right.
pro tip, this year I'm packing a humidifier because it is so dry. And by the end of the week, like I can't wear contacts. I'm dried out. So this year the humidifier is coming with me.
Yeah, going from Seattle to, I mean, like you and I were saying this earlier, Seattle or the Gold Coast where I am, both very
Nice and
humid places.
humid.
Right. I think the difference is, I was saying this earlier, is that because I lived in Utah for so long, my body, even though I've been away from there, kind of is used to it.
It's
So I get
done
my
that
lips
thing
get,
before.
yeah, my lips get cracked and all that, but then I get used to it. So
Yeah,
anyhow,
yeah. All right. We have
our
quite
listeners are
the
like
list
super
of
stoked
things.
about this.
We've got quite the list of things to talk about today. In no particular order, the first thing on my list is the disclosure from Hugging Face that came through, I don't know, 3-4 days ago. They said that, and I'll quote here, a data set uploaded to its platform abused a security vulnerability to run malicious code on its servers. And I took a look at their disclosure. A lot of other people in the community did. It was a lot of like, we can't really tell what you're saying happened here. A lot of people said it was very obviously written by AI, which I concur, which I will say is, not always the greatest thing in your IR reports. But then, yesterday, we saw a follow up. OpenAI came out and claimed that one of its models did the exploit, that it broke itself out and whoops, sorry, we hacked Hugging Face. They said it was an internal cybersecurity test that went awry. They claimed that it had escaped isolated testing environment, reached into Hugging Face's systems from there. Um, we're seeing two reactions to this news. One reaction is kind of just the news being put out there is true, that, oh my gosh, this thing happened. OpenAI did this thing. And then the other side, which is mostly hanging out in the cybersecurity community, that's a lot of words, is people calling BS on this claim. And there's various reasons for why people are calling BS on the claim, but ultimately it kind of comes down to a lot of the community thinks that's a marketing stunt and that this did not really happen or didn't happen the way that maybe they're saying it did. They're not providing very much information. So, Paul, you've been looking into it. What's your hot take?
Oh man. Well, I'm definitely in that other camp, the skeptical camp. I wouldn't say that I'm like, I don't think, I think there's some nuance to my position, in the sense that, all right, so I would say the first group is the singularity group, right? Like, oh my god, this is evidence that AI is AGI and all this other bullpucky. And I think the other group that I fall squarely in is the much more skeptical group. So the details are light, which is always concerning, right? And you see this kind of theme coming out of the AI labs, where they like to make these big splashy things they call incident response, publications or whatever, but they really are lacking. They weren't written by people that do IR or anything, right? So, short story long, just the details are missing. The idea that, like, a lot of people in the skeptical side think like, oh, how could OpenAI's security be so be so poor that it could find this way, the whole out from the isolation and out to the internet, blah blah blah. I don't see that as being that. That's not a deal breaker for me. But what is a deal breaker for me is that they just haven't talked about what happened, and so just my immediate flags go up. Yeah, I mean that's basically it.
Yeah, this is a suspicious by default community. So a report with thin information is not necessarily encouraging. And we've been seeing these frontier model companies doing things that certainly the pattern is, oh my gosh, look how dangerous this thing is. And it's an interesting marketing strategy. Okay, segue.
Yeah, and I want to say one more. I want to say one more thing that I forgot to say in my first little blurb. It's unfortunate because you're right. I think a lot of people are listening to OpenAI here and thinking, "Oh, this is just you trying to, drum up something after the whole mythos, this whole cultural shifting thing about mythos, right?" You have people that have no idea asking me, "What do you think about mythos?" Is it, But here's the thing: is OpenAI's latest models are actually very capable and relatively inexpensive and crushing it. And so it's unfortunate that if this really is some sort of marketing ploy, and it feels like at some level, some end percentage of this is really just, marketing fluff around something that might or might not have happened. But it's unfortunate that they're doing that instead of just like letting their models speak for themselves. Because I and a lot of other people, because of the Anthropic shizzle show, have moved over to OpenAI and other models, and they're very capable. So maybe try to win on the merits of your models rather than making up this contrived Mission Impossible bullpucky scenario. All right. Sorry.
Anyway. I know. We'll have to keep our eye on it. Okay.
All right.
We added, I just did the mental math, almost or maybe over 10,000 new threat reports in the last few days outside of our normal ingestion pipelines. And those two, that huge boom in new records came from two places specifically. And so the first one is in GitHub and the second one is in RubyGems. And they're two very different scenarios, totally unrelated, but both uniquely interesting to talk about. So the first one, the GitHub one, more than 7,000 malicious repositories, GitHub repositories, were disclosed by a company called Island in a campaign they're calling AgentBaiting, where they said at least 800, maybe more, of those repositories are posing as AI skills or MCP servers. And this is a wave that peaked back in April. So we have, of course, added those repositories to our threat database. You can pull them. You can see them today. I think they're under the AgentBaiting hashtag. However, I think what's interesting here is less about, oh, these repos are scary, block them, and more the trend that we're seeing and that worries us and should worry the industry about where malware is heading and how threat actors are going to be able to take advantage of natural language.
Yeah, a great segue. I mean, the concern here, basically the intent here, and there was a lot of repositories in this campaign, right? And so the idea here was those repositories were created by bad guys, threat actors, non-attributed bad guys, to basically then be pulled in as dependencies or subject matter publications. So basically when the AI was looking for, hey, what's the strongest, AI model for dental hygiene, or I don't know, whatever, like it goes out and finds these things, which is a very, very, it's a common thing we're seeing. Like, so across the board in NPM and in VS Code and all these ecosystems, we're seeing bad guys really kind of focusing on AI, MCP, and AI aligned kind of, malicious stuff. And there's I'm saying stuff because there's just so much of it across the board, but they're targeting those areas because what they want to do is they want to get to that natural language boundary where you can get it into an agent and have it do the bad thing. So for the vast majority of these things, they pretend to be a subject matter expert publication about a thing. They get pulled in and they've got instructions, natural language instructions inside of them that does the bad thing, pulls payloads and goes from there. And
the point here is that's harder behavior to detect because many of the tools that are out there are designed around detecting the code that does the bad thing, not the natural language instructions to do a bad thing.
Yeah, and I'm concerned. Like, first, I'm concerned on two fronts. First, because this is just a whole new thing, and it's just we've never seen anything like it, and there's not really a lot of ways to protect ourselves from this, and it's concerning for me both personally and as well as kind of professionally. So that's one thing. But the other thing is that I think what'll happen now is that the whole industry, how the cyber industry is very, thematic, will be like, oh, we need to address this, and all the effort and budget dollars will all go towards that, which I'm not, I'm expecting it, but I'm also worried that then we're going to like just drop the ball, because historically this has often happened. We drop the ball in those other areas that have been successful for us, right? Those places where we still need to do the things like make sure the bad malicious packages aren't being ingested into your NPM, your JavaScript, or your Python application.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, we see that on repeat in the tech industry, whether it's cybersecurity or not. You and I both lived through the on-prem to cloud, on-prem is dead kind of phase. There have certainly been other phases like that where it's, oh, agents are here and no one's ever going to write code again. The truth is always somewhere in the middle. There will continue to be your standard malicious packages that will continue to get harder to detect through the means that we've been talking about on the show, whether that be clustering or hiding things in dependencies, but they will continue to be code. And then there will be a set that will be this novel approach of hijacking an agent through natural language. So yeah, the truth is somewhere in the middle. We're going to need both. Beware the hype, because it's coming.
And beware the hype.
Okay, the second burst that
so many
we
things
added,
to say, but I'm not going to.
Yeah. Moving on. You added 2,539 new RubyGems threat reports to the database this week. And when you messaged me, I was like, are you sure, Ruby? Really? What's going on over there? And again, this is another something unique is happening. These packages have indicators that suggest that they're similar to the GemStuffer campaign that was talked about, let's see here, back in May or so. I think maybe Socket found the GemStuffer campaign. And not a guarantee that it's the same threat actor or the same campaign, but similar vibe. And these packages are not necessarily malicious, but what they're being used for is a means of hiding exfiltration in gems. And we've seen threat actors use other technologies in similar ways to evade detection. So let's rewind. We had crypto wallets became big, in the last year of DPRK hiding payloads in crypto wallets because they look like regular traffic. Presumably what's happening here is these are commits that contain data, right? That the way that these are getting exfiltrated is through these commits to projects. What are you seeing with it?
Yeah, what they are is they're actually net new packages. They're net new RubyGems packages. So basically, this campaign that Socket found several months ago, the GemStuffer campaign, was really similar to Shai-Hulud and Team PCP, where what for Shai-Hulud and Team PCP, what they would do is they would steal all your credentials, they would compress it, and then they would create a net new repository with a name, and that just allowed the threat actors themselves to go and search GitHub, find those exfilled payloads and pull them, and then use those credentials. This is similar to that, as I understand it, in the sense that this was targeting the UK government, and it was exfilling the contents of those compromised systems as RubyGems packages, which is seems like there are more efficient ways to exfil data, but hey, innovation's always interesting, I suppose. This latest wave, again, it's not for sure because the payloads just aren't there like they were in the first one. I went and inspected some of the payloads from the first wave of GemStuffer, and sure enough, it looks like exfil data, right? There's some other stuff in there too as well, but and it's different from package to package, but there was obviously in many of those packages from the first wave exfilled data in them, which leans towards this theory that this was exfiltration from the targets. In these new packages, I could find an exfil data, but they're still there. They're creating them, and the naming construct is very similar or the same. And so the expectation. So I reached out to the RubyGems team and trying to get some clarity and around that. So maybe more to come on that in the future, but I don't think it's a big high impact thing. It's just like a lot of packages when we don't really know why, and that's always a concern, right? When you're seeing somebody use automation like that, like just because the first shot misses doesn't mean that the second shot isn't going to hit. So we want to try to understand, so we understand if there's something we need to protect against going forward. Is that a good segue to our other RubyGems?
That's a good segue to our other one. I feel like this is like the wacky news, like truth is stranger than fiction. Right? What you shared with me as we were getting ready to record is RubyGems has been leaking user API keys for years. And this was an unintentional flaw that they corrected and they're notifying people about. But I think like the TLDR is if you use RubyGems and you've got API keys in there and you haven't gotten a notification, maybe better safe than sorry, go ahead and rotate. But Paul, you know this through some networks of yours, and it's, to some extent public knowledge. So share what's going on there.
Yeah, I mean the GHSA is out, the GitHub Security Advisory is out. I don't know if it sounds like there might not be a CVE, but so basically my mate Luke down, he's actually near where I am right now, but he works for Truffle, and Truffle identified that it looked like there was some caching of API credentials in the RubyGems. You can only find it. Certain older clients were doing this because you had to ask it for the right way. So you had to, not everybody was getting it. But the point is that under the right conditions, unfortunately, the CDN was caching those API credentials, so that exposing those, and people were getting somebody else's API. So imagine trying to push packages to RubyGems, and you're like, hey, how come I can't push this package, right? And then you go and do like a RubyGems list, and you're like, wait, that's not the name of my packages. Wait, these are somebody. And then you go and look at them, and you're like, hey, that's Gems package. Why am I seeing Gems package? That's the kind of thing that could happen out of this. But anyhow, RubyGems handled it. They jumped on it really, really quickly. Just big shout out to them. Super impressed with having dealt with NPM and other ecosystems for years, where it's not as responsive. I said this to the RubyGems team. I was like, you guys crushed it. Like, this is the best response I've seen from a registry ecosystem team, volunteer or otherwise, ever. So big shout out to them. They fixed it, and they're letting customers know right now, and they're disclosing it. It's already public now. So big shout out to Luke. I don't know if he's listening today, but that was entirely on him. So good on him.
Yeah. Always good to hear about good incident responses from the open source ecosystem. Okay, last topic.
Actually, I want to say one more thing. I think it's important because, like, when this kind of thing happens, we have this network, right? And you reach out to your network and you figure out the right people to talk. And that just kind of came together really, really well here, right? I know some of the people on the RubyGems team, and so this is the kind of thing I really would like to put back out there. If you're doing disclosure on either side of that, try to find those people that can bring the conversation together as quickly as possible and as powerfully as possible, right? If you're just sending something to an email and you're not hearing back much, well, maybe that's because you haven't gone and done what you need to do, which is reach out to people inside your network who you think can put that together. So that's
it's a great example of like the real value of a network beyond career progression. Okay, for real. Crash Stealer. We teased last week that we would be talking about macOS malware, which is not something we really bring up a whole lot. And in part, that's because we don't see a lot of malware that targets specific ecosystems. A lot of times it's more agnostic, but our friend and top contributor to open source malware threat intel reports, Ties from Jamf, published a really great report recently on this campaign he's called Crash Stealer. What it is it's a novel malware info stealer. It's a C++, and it impersonates Apple's crash reporting framework to harvest stuff. So it's harvesting credentials, keychain data, the usual stuff, and then it's exfiltrating it. Paul, you took a look at this after Ty's published his blog. And, it's always interesting to see the way that these things build. So you did some building on the work that he did. And to kind of summarize sort of 3 discoveries that you made, basically, you discovered that there's a second and a third track to this, that it is not just Crash Stealer, but that this threat actor has other, what's the right way to say it? Pans in the fire, pokers in the fire. I don't know. Something's on fire.
What other weapons in their quiver?
Yeah, something else is going on. So one of these other ones is a rat, a remote access Trojan. After Ty's published his article, the threat actor did clean up some of the Crash Stealer stuff, some but not all, and very, very quickly spun up a new track. So we've kind of been holding off publishing. We want to make sure that we can support the research on this without, burning the infrastructure and having them go underground again.
I think this is just a really unique story. And the reason that we've kind of held off on publishing is that I think that the story that I want to tell is about, in this new world that we live in with AI and access to, weapons, cyber weapons, software supply chain in this case, what used to be true isn't really true as much anymore. So what we're seeing right now is we're seeing a single threat actor, which is obviously not a single human being, right? But we're seeing a single threat actor in a campaign actually using many different, totally unrelated malware strains in their. And it's just, I've never seen this before. One goes away and another new one comes in. You're like, what just happened? Did I just go out of one dimension where that was true and now into another where this other one? And so I think that's the thing that really kind of sticks with me is that, whether this threat actor is buying these things from somebody else and just buying many multiples of them, right? Or if they're creating them themselves, or they're taking old code and making it new again, a la Team PCP and Miasma and stuff. Who knows? But I've never seen one threat actor group, run through so many massive, big, totally independent, weapons of mass destruction as these guys are. So I think that's the thing that stands out for me, Jen.
Yeah, and I think, like you said toward the beginning, this kind of pivoting, ability to be this diverse, like the malware industry's EGOT award or something like that. They're winning multiple categories here. Is potentially being traced back to the way that LLMs are making this easier to develop quickly.
And we're seeing this echoed across, as I talked about something totally different earlier, at the same time, we're seeing the same thing here, which is like everywhere. We're just seeing the number of novel new info stealers, which if you look hard enough at them, they all have the same kind of core, right? They all are born from the same Adam and Eve, or that same Eve, right? But people are just iterating on these so quickly and so fast, and so many different new info stealers out there in particular. They're just, it's like tribbles. They're just, bam, I just dropped a Star Trek.
It's pretty good. I saw a reference to Gremlins the other day, and same vibe. Don't get them wet, or don't give them water or something. I don't remember.
Don't let them replicate. Whichever. Don't let them replicate. Yeah, it's crazy.
So why don't we've got a little bit of time, and we did have a request from the community to kind of go a little one-on-one on some things. So maybe this is a good opportunity for us to talk about info stealers, because not all malware is info stealers. So, like, what are some of the characteristics that you look for in an info stealer? How do they get assembled? What do you feel like is kind of a good base level of knowledge for people to have about these?
Okay, we talk about info stealers like they're like a class of thing, and they are, but they're not. So like what I'm seeing is I'm seeing ultra simplistic, totally in the clear, 50-line code info stealers. And then I'm over here, I'm seeing DPRK, massively obfuscated, 6-stage complex things, also, using info stealers. So it's a vast kind of ecosystem. But I think that first group where people can basically just go to an LLM and say, hey, create this thing really quickly and just drop it in. This is where I'm seeing the most expansion, right? And so what you're looking for in an info stealer is like, what is it targeting? Is it specific to is it focusing on just crypto? Is it focusing just on Solana? Is it focusing on some of them really focus on AWS or Azure, stealing those creds, and you can tell then that the intent for the author was, that's what they want. So you're looking for what it's stealing, and then you're looking for what does it do with it? How does it exfil? And that you always have that exfil component, because what is a bad guy? Bad guy creates, steals something, and they got to take their loot, and they got to do something with that.
Got to put it somewhere.
Got to put it somewhere. And so, we've built a whole system at OSM using our kill chain technology that basically takes that exfil point and kind of works backwards towards the entry point and figures it out. It's similar to reachability for vulnerability analysis, like identifying reachability. The idea behind reachability is that it figures out if the vulnerability in a piece of code and at the function level or wherever is actually exploitable, right? Can you actually get to that vulnerability if you call it the right way? In a similar way, kill chain says, it's really what the attack path. It's the execution order ultimately of the malware. So you can just ignore the other files that are there, and a lot of these threat actors are just throwing hundreds or thousands of files to hide their shiz. But if you know how to just follow the execution order, it's relatively easy. And so if you find that exfil point and work back from that, it's been very successful.
Et voila. Okay, surprise topic. It's been I feel like it's been a really long week. I forgot that I published some research on Friday about Pollen Writer. And so why don't we wrap up on the Pollen Writer stuff? And I think this is a complicated but not complicated situation. So I read some research last week that was published by the team over at Checkmarks, where they published a breakdown about a supply chain campaign that they called Chain Veil, and then a follow-up to that was Vite Venom. And honestly, the Vite part is what caught my mind, because I was like, oh, a lot of people use Vite. I should see what's going on over in Vite. And I read through it, and something really stuck out for me in the IOCs that they listed. They specifically listed Tron, Aptos, and Binance blockchain addresses. And I thought, oh, that particular combination, the three of them together, that's very familiar. We've been tracking that since the beginning of the year with Pollen Writer. And
that's before.
Yeah, even before.
Yeah.
And it's, maybe we can talk a little bit again for people who aren't familiar with blockchain multiplexing. When I tell people crypto wallets can be involved in malware, they think of it more like, oh, the crypto wallets are being stolen, but in fact, they're being used as a way to hide traffic and data being exfilled, again, like the gems, like other things. They're using that as a part of their C2 infrastructure because it looks like legitimate traffic. And this is what makes it so hard for things like EDR to catch them. Anyway, long story short, I looked at the IOCs for this Vite Venom chainmail set of something like 13 packages that were published between like June, July timeframe. And wouldn't you know it, they had 5 shared IOCs with your Pollen Writer research, Paul. So some keys, some wallets, an Aptos address. They were byte for byte identical. There's kind of no doubt here. This is not somebody else got a hold of this infrastructure and is running a totally unrelated campaign. This is Lazarus Group executing their Pollen Writer work. And, we were just talking last week about Pollen Writer and the huge number of new compromised repositories that you discovered. And we talked about how those repositories end up getting poisoned. Sorry, brain. I haven't had my second coffee today. We talked about they one of the ways they compromise developer repositories is if that developer consumed something malicious in the past. And so I would hypothesize that these typo squats that Checkmarks discovered are part of that campaign to get people to consume poison packages to then do whatever it is that they've got planned with their whole pollen writer orchestration stuff.
Yeah, I mean, so I think the first thing is that pollen writer is, we talk about pollen writer like it's a campaign, and it is, but it's also an evolution of a set of North Korean threat actor kind of, TTPs. So, for example, in 2025, we saw the advent of ether hiding, which is basically using specific blockchains like Aptos and Tron, which the chain, blockchain is immutable. When you put something there, the whole point of it is that that you can't change that, right? But those Tron and Aptos and this BSC Binance thing have these little kind of memo things that you can change, and those things are immutable. So when you make a transaction, you can basically buy your ability to make a change, and that's where DPRK is hiding their payloads. Because otherwise, when the first version of ether hiding, they weren't doing that, and then they put their payload there, and everybody can see it, and then it couldn't change, and then you went kind of puts it's too public. So then they figured out the memo thing. So we have to make a distinction between ether hiding and this a TTP versus pollen writer, which is really this human botnet that you and I are talking about, where DPRK has persistence on thousands or tens of thousands of developers' machines based on either fake recruiters or just because as this has grown, a lot of people have been compromised now just when they pull open source. We've been disclosing this to open source projects, and they've been removing these things and whatnot. But so a lot of people are getting compromised in a lot of ways. But the point is that pollen writer is really this movement, this campaign where it's has access to all these developers and it's using it to do more bad stuff. That's pollen writer in a nutshell.
Helpful. Okay, we're at a little over half an hour. We hit a lot of topics today. We'll cut that. Yeah, busy day. So we'll go ahead and wrap up here. If you're going to be in Adelaide next week for B-Sides Adelaide, hit up Paul. And another plug, if you're going to be at Hacker Summer Camp, let us know. We'll be there all week. We've got now 3 talks during DEF CON. Paul, you've added a panel in the Cloud Village on MCP servers, I think, malicious MCP servers. So yeah, that should be interesting. Yay. All right. Have a good week, everyone. Good weekend.
Thanks for listening, people. Appreciate it. Cheers.